May not seem like it, but this Marvel Legends Spider-Man figure has my favorite accessory out of the retro line so far. Hey everyone, David here with another Marvel Legends. It's kind of a swap. I meant to review a different figure this time around, but that one's gonna have to wait due to some mishaps, some issues that are going on with it. More about that later. So for now, I figured, you know what, let's take a break from all the Batman content. I know I've been uploading a lot of Batman stuff here, even though there's more to come. But let's take a look at another Marvel Legends that I picked up from the store because I thought to myself, okay, he looks alright, but one accessory I am eager to get to, which I've already kind of foreshadowed. But here we have Negative Zone Spider-Man. So in my quest to collect more Spideys, we have the Negative Zone version here, which is, for all intents and purposes, a black and white Spidey. He doesn't really have too much web pattern or any intricate details going about him, but he's primarily a black and white variant of previous versions and models of this particular figure. And obviously he's modeled after the Negative Zone Spider-Man, which has occurred within the Spider-Verse. Different interpretations of that amongst the comics, but as you can see, this is Marvel Legends' interpretation in a 6-inch scale form. And as far as the figure itself, he is okay. You know, he's nothing too bad, but he's nothing, you know, massive or anything to write home about either. Because as far as quality and interpretation here, he definitely feels like a reskin of another figure. There's parts about him that look pretty decent, and especially when it comes to his specific limbs and the actual design behind those limbs. But then there's other facets of the figure that I'm not too keen on. I'm not a huge fan of. For one, it would have to be primarily here around the torso area. Specifically, the way that his abdominal area is kind of sculpted and designed, it just looks too much. It's a whole different definition of washboard abs, all right? They always say that, damn, that guy's got, or girl even got washboard abs. Get washboard abs in 30 minutes with this new machine that's endorsed by Chuck Norris, whatever. But these are legitimate washboard abs, as in the entire torso piece looks like a washboard. It looks too lean, too flat and rectangular that I'm just not vibing with it whatsoever. He just doesn't look like a properly sculpted Spidey. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the Cyborg Spider-Man or even the Armored Spider-Man has a better sculpt going on here in the mid-torso area than even this one. And then it gets a little worse as we kind of navigate above here, and the spider symbols on both ends look pretty decent. You have the simple white one here on the chest with the black one on the back, still endorsing that little hexagonal peg slot in there that is probably designed for some kind of translucent stand that unfortunately was still not included with this figure. But if you do happen to have one laying about, he could be utilized with that right there. However, as we navigate the shoulders, you'll see the other little complaint that I have, which is that this trapezius kind of area of his body where that's connected to his neck is floating a little too high that you can actually see the divides between these joints, which will cover in the articulation, and the actual shoulders. So it just looks off. It looks like this particular Spidey was designed or molded within the machine to be a little too high, that there's very significant gaps between his trapezoid area right here and his actual shoulder joint right there. There's just a huge divide there, and it doesn't flush with the rest of the body here. And it just looks off. It just looks really weird. And at that point, we haven't even covered what I like to call his duck feet. I don't know. They just look like a duck's feet. But the way that the feet are molded this time around, I mean, it's very sturdy for posability because it covers more ground, quite literally. But from an aesthetic standpoint, it just looks weird to have his feet be looking like a duck's bill right here. However, I can at least say that the overall matte finish, the actual texture behind the figure itself, as well as the head sculpt, which I really like as far as design. It's very simplistic, very minimalist, but that's the whole point about a minimalist Negative Zone Spidey, is that he's very clearly black and white, both literally and figuratively. So you can see right here that the head sculpt and the face paint that went on with it looks very clean and precise and sturdy as far as that matte finish. But of course, like I said, nothing to write home about as far as like little intricate details. He's meant to be just a standard Negative Zone Spidey. The similar thing could be said for its articulation, which, like I said, there's a huge divide here on the top of the shoulders that bugs me. but at least you can say that because of that, he's going to have free range of movement of those shoulders, which we'll tackle first. We normally don't do this, but it's a perfect segue into the mobility of those shoulders, which of course can allow a ratcheted 360-degree vertical line right there, a slightly stilted but still doable flex to the sides there, an extension to the sides, and just like Cyborg Spidey that I covered previously, he's got that additional piece that's right underneath that gap that I was complaining about, but that additional joint allows movement of the arm forward and backward. Not as flexible as that of Cyborg Spidey, as I've come to notice, but it's still doable enough that it allows quite a bit of mobility, more than I was actually willing to bargain for. It's got the bicep swivel right there all the way across that allows full 360 movement all the way across horizontally right there. And then of course 2 joints on the elbow that fully bend on either arm. And then of course the wrists are going to be able to rotate 360 degrees, as well as slightly pivot inwards and outwards due to that hinge joint there in the middle. Of course, before we move on to the rest of the body, we have to cover that head, which thankfully retains the same joint as Cyborg Spidey that caught me off by surprise, which allows full 360-degree movement, but then you'll notice the little hinge in the middle that allows pivoting from up to down very, very fluidly and very free roam, in the sense that it can pretty much crouch into and of himself as such, crunch in there, right there, like about right there, and then look almost all the way up as you see before you're there, but not much in the way of tilting, just a slight little movement right about right there. Then we get to the torso. Unfortunately, like I said, not only is the design of the torso a little off-putting to me, but the actual hinge joint there in the middle is not as movable or free as I would like it to be, because even Cyborg Spidey was able to flex very freely and very openly. Negative Zone Spider-Man, on the other hand, not so much. He's a little stilted when it comes to flexing upwards. In fact, it barely moves. You can see right there that that's the only little bit of movement that hinge joint allows going upwards. Going downwards, it's a little bit more generous, but again, I know I'm making an awful lot of comparisons in this video to Cyborg Spidey recently, but Cyborg Spidey is able to perform almost an entire sit-up, whereas Negative Zone Spidey here, he's a little too lazy. He's not doing the full crunch right there, as you can see. Thankfully, the waist joint right about right there cuts evenly to allow full 360, and it is ratcheted, as you can see right there. Of course, again, because of the design of that torso, it just looks so weird to have it like this, because it's all just so clear cut as far as that washboard design that when you do this, it's just so weird that at that point you might as well not even turn the torso all the way around, or even to the sides by even a few degrees. It just looks weird. Then we get to the top leg joints, which allow movement about that far forward, not much in the way back, just ever so slightly due to the butt sculpt right there. And it can extend to the sides, except it stops right about right there. I feel like the way that this is designed, it should allow a little bit more, but it's due to these shells that stop the movement right about right there. Then we do have upper thigh swivel joints right there that allow the legs to rotate a full 360 degrees. Does feel a little too gelled together, and it's not ratcheted, but it is doable. Then 2 joints on either leg, or either knee I should say, that allow full bending right about right there. Once you do that though, however, I don't know if it's just my fear, but then it feels like the plastic within the thigh does bend. It's almost a little cheap feeling, but at least I'd rather have it bend than to have it be a little too sturdy and a little too stuck together that I risk breaking the figure, which is actually what's been happening with that other figure that I was supposed to cover this week, but unfortunately, due to some mishaps, I'm gonna have to actually return it and ask for a replacement. So, TBA on that particular Marvel Legends review. For the time being, however, here we have the rest of the articulation for Negative Zone Spidey, which also follows suit with the previous 2 Marvel Legends that I've been covering as far as the ankle joint movement that is restricted as far as moving horizontally until you take what I like to again call the duck feet and fold it either down or up, and once you do that, it will allow it to rotate the full 360 degrees upon that ball joint. So it's a little iffy that way. But if you've been following the past reviews that have had this, I don't know if it's considered an issue, because on the one hand, you do wish that you can move the legs, or I'm sorry, the feet horizontally without having to bend either of them in either direction. But at the same time, it also it serves as a bit of a fail-safe, so that you never risk breaking the figure as far as posability. No thigh swivels, or I'm sorry, shin swivels of any kind like were found on Cyborg Spidey, unfortunately, so those were omitted here. And because of that, that horizontal foot articulation comes back as being a problem, as far as not being able to rotate them around unless you bend them all the way forward or all the way back. It's just, it rears its ugly head. And there is a little bit of pivoting when you move it, upwards, move the foot upwards like so. You can pivot the foot slightly, as you can see right there, but it just ends up looking broken and not at all realistic. But then again, when it comes to a negative zone Spidey, are we really striving for realism here? As it stands, again, similar to the figure itself, articulation is not that great, but it's also not the worst that I've seen yet in a Marvel Legends figure. Now, on to why I actually picked this figure up in the first place, and that is one of the accessories. When it comes to accessories overall, however, he comes with some of the standard ones, which are actually pretty generous. As you can see, he comes with 2-fisted hands by default right out of the package. But if you would like to, just like with other Marvel Legends, you could also swap them for alternate hands, 2 of which are pretty much his open, showy, or as I like to call, wall-crawling hands, so you can swap them in with those right there. And each set of hands are pretty much just straightforward black. Again, no real fine detail on them, nothing to really write home about, as you can see right there. So we could go ahead and set those to the side. And then naturally, unlike some other Marvel Legends, so I don't know why they kind of pick and choose which ones come with them and which ones don't, but Negative Zone Spidey here did come with web shooting hands. So he at least does have that form of posability, or that option right there. But then he has my favorite accessory in quite some time. And this is ultimately why I picked this guy up. I mean, I'm sorry. He was available. Thought to myself, all right, he looks kind of neat. It would be nice to have a little black and white Spidey here, a Negative Zone version, or a variant, if you will. But then when I saw this, I was like, yo, insta-buy. Get it. He comes with a Negative Zone slice of pizza. Look at that thing. I know, it's ridiculous, but I just love it. I just love how both awesome and disgusting it looks. It's a Negative Zone pizza. Black, well, mostly white with black pepperonis. That's right. Black pepperonis right on top of it. I don't see any other form of condiment or topping, but of course, what other form of pizza is Spidey really going to like? I do, however, I am completely infatuated with how much detail they put into this one slice of pizza, from the little divide on here on the top line here where you can kind of see a little bit of the crust where it separates from the cheese to the crust, to the actual melting cheese on the side and towards the tip here of the slice itself. And then if you flip it around, you can actually see a little bit of a texture of the dough cooked right underneath of the bottom side of the slice itself. So yeah, it's almost as if they made a Negative Zone variant of a previous Spidey figure, which, like I said, this little mid-torso here kind of makes me feel like they took parts of another Spidey figure, and that's why it looks kind of off, as opposed to the thighs and then the duck feet, as I like to call them. But they went ahead and chose to make a Negative Zone Spidey just so they can throw in Negative Zone pizza with them. And I'm all for it. I am definitely vibing with it. And as far as I can tell, it looks like the only hand that is legitimately serviceable to hold said pizza slice is going to be one of his open hands. So let me see if I can find the right one, which is going to be his right. That's going to be holding the pizza. And then the other one, we're going to have it be the web shooting hand. So let's go ahead and remove. And of course, removing and swapping in the hands is just as simple as you can see right there. They are holding a little bit of resistance, so they do have a tendency to be a little bit tight like past Marvel Legends, but you simply just take one out with a simple tug, pop the other one in, and you have a new hand to pose him with. So I'm going to have his left hand be the web shooter one. It's kind of like this. like that. So let me just get him situated in a right stance here. There you go. This is why I got the figure. So that he can hold a slice of pizza while at the same time being ready for action or anything that he needs to get done. There he is. Look at him. Okay, all kidding aside, apart from the one accessory, is it enough to justify adding this Spidey figure to a collection? If you're a completist, 100%. However, if you are a little bit more specific or sophisticated about which Spidey men you add to your Marvel Legends set, I would probably say this is one that you could pass up. It's probably obvious as to why this figure is actually more readily available than others that are much more difficult to find, such as Symbiote Spidey or the Ben Reilly Spidey. This one, I was able to pick him up very easily from Target, so it's not like it's a very rare figure or it's coming in very short amounts. So because of that, I would say that there's a reason behind that. So if you are thinking about picking this up, do it for the Negative Zone pizza. If not, you could do enough without it, because there's nothing significantly bad here, but there's also nothing here that is quintessential for any Spider-Man fan to go after. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out this other Marvel Legends figure review showing up on screen now. If you guys do want to add Negative Zone Spidey to your collection, use the affiliate links in the description. It helps with the channel quite a bit. Until next time guys, as always, stay humble.